Hello and welcome to Global Pathways, the podcast that explores the intricate threads of transnational experiences and the evolving meanings of identity. Today, we're delving into a profound and often poignant statement. You can't go home no more. This is not just a nostalgic lament. It's the title of a chapter by me, Mojúbàolú Olúfúnke Okome, in one of a two-volume publication. This one is titled West African Migrations, Transnational Pathways into a New Century. And it was published by Palgrave Macmillan in 2012. And the volume was edited by me, Mojúbàolú Olúfúnke Okome, and Professor Olufemi Von, who is now a professor at Amherst College. At the time, he was at Bowdoin College in Maine, and I was at Brooklyn College, and I still am at Brooklyn College. So, in this chapter, I use my personal journey and the rich wisdom of Yoruba culture to navigate the complex interplay of home, identity, and belonging for Africans in the age of globalization. This work, titled You Can't Go Home No More, From West African Migrations, Transnational and Global Pathways in a New Century, offers an insightful exploration of how global phenomena shape individual lives and how individuals in turn consciously shape their experiences within these worldwide currents. Join us as we unpack the layers of this statement, we're going to draw on personal anecdotes, powerful narratives, and proverbs. And I would end this by doing a collective call for action by us African peoples. So now, let us go into looking at the evolving meaning of home as I explore it within this chapter. The concept of home is deeply ingrained in human consciousness, and home is often romanticized as a place of comfort and inevitable return. Yoruba proverbs beautifully capture this sentiment. For example, Ajo le dun, konile ma rele. That is, no matter how enjoyable the journey might be, one is bound to return home. And there's also Ile labo isinmi oko. Home is the resting place for those returning from the farm. This signifies that you labor abroad and you rest at home. However, for me, a Nigerian sojourner in North America, this traditional understanding of home has been profoundly challenged. My journey began after my required year of National Youth Service Corps and 1 year of work as a high school teacher in Agege, an exurb of Lagos, the mega city inhabited by 20 million people and counting. And I arrived in what was then a rugged and grimy downtown Brooklyn, which was a stark contrast to my expectations about New York, another mega city that doesn't have as many millions of people as Lagos, Nigeria, the city where I was born and where I spent my formative years. I even confess to having come reluctantly, primarily because my husband's specialized education was only available outside of Nigeria, while I could have pursued my master's in political science more comfortably and affordably back home at the University of Ibadan. The Nigeria I left behind rapidly deteriorated economically and politically, especially during the military regime of Buhari, supported by Idi Agbon. The Naira's value plummeted precipitously after I left Nigeria. And this deeply impacted ordinary people's lives in a way that tattered the social fabric. Those years were regarded by some scholars as the locust years, because it seemed as if locusts had descended and eaten up everything that we thought of as normal life, and people's lives became really seriously precarious. So I, at that time, began to see that it wasn't possible to go home according to my 5-year plan, because I planned to come to the US, do my master's education, do my PhD, in 5 years, go back to Nigeria. Now, what happened? Instead, were profound nationwide losses in Nigeria and then personal losses for me. In the years I've been in the United States, I've lost my sister, my junior sister, my junior brother, my junior sister, Kemi, my junior brother, Gbenga, my grandmother, Shinyade, my father, Matthew Odusanya, my mother, Sarah Segilola. They all have passed away since I've been in this country, America, and this further irrevocably changed my perception of home. I poignantly state in this chapter, can I go back home to the Nigeria that I left before coming to America? The unfortunate answer is never. This acknowledges that Nigeria itself had changed fundamentally from its economy to its political landscape, which now sees makeshift homes and markets bulldozed, people's places of residence, which were regarded as slums, have been raised, and instead we have an emerging idea of a Lagos megacity that people want to be a place that competes with Dubai. And, the megacity is being built as we speak now. There's also the fact that Nigeria experienced long years of military dictatorship, and there have been rapidly changing social relations, and my family was also affected by this. The shifting nature of home is not unique to me. Human migrations in West Africa have historically been driven by population pressure, poor economic performances, and endemic conflicts, with people viewing the sub-region as an economic unit, allowing free movement of goods, services, and people, something that has been extended to the rest of Africa in the new African Continental Agreement for Free Trade. But there are limits, and, this also is some of the evolving relationships that trouble the notion of home, belonging, and diaspora. So we have a West Africa where in the 1970s, I vividly remember the mass banishment of Nigerians from Ghana. And this was remarkable to me because relatives of mine who had lived in Ghana for generations were forced to return to an unfamiliar Nigeria. Some of them even had children who didn't even speak Yorùbá. This event, in fact, led to the phrase, Ghana must go. Now the name used for ubiquitous cheap traveling bags that for me still symbolize hurried and often forced migration. So Nigeria, West Africa, and people are changing, and those changes are, changing what home is and how we should think about home. So this segment is going to be focused on language, identity, and the enduring colonial legacy. Identity, as explored in this book chapter, is deeply intertwined with language. I argue that, quote, the linguistic is political. And in doing this, I'm emphasizing that the use, study, and proliferation of language are not just for communicating, but that communications using language are political acts. A significant byproduct of successful colonization is the unquestioning embrace of the colonizer's language, and in our case in Nigeria, English. Especially the educated elite is deeply invested in this embrace of the colonizer's language. Ngugi wa Thiong'o, late Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a scholar who greatly influenced my understanding of the politics of language, articulates this perfectly. I quote, "The very words we use are a product of a collective history," unquote. And so the words we use are laden with the weight of the past, present, and aspirations for the future. I also observed in this chapter that many Nigerians, especially those trained for leadership, such as me, proudly privileged English, particularly what was called Queen's English, or they wanted an Oxbridge accent, that is, an accent that we assume people who attended Oxford and Cambridge University have, that is highly elitist enunciation. They value this over local Nigerian languages and accents, considering the latter pedestrian. This preference for the language of the former colonizers, often at the expense of understanding one's own language and culture, is a common experience among recent Africans in America. And I note this, that in my now over 4 decades in North America, this remains the case. We valorize our understanding, our adroitness in the use of English language, and the refined accents that we have over our understanding of our own mother tongues. Despite this pervasive trend, I actually firmly anchor my emotional identity in my Yoruba roots. I explain in the chapter that my formative years and earliest memories were shaped and marked by Yoruba. In the first place, Lagos, when I was growing up, had people from all over Nigeria and even from West Africa, but majority of the people were Yoruba speaking. This makes Yoruba an inseparable part of my very being. I draw heavily on Yoruba proverbs throughout the chapter, and I say that, as you know, together with the Yorubas, that òwe lẹṣin ọ̀rọ̀, bí ọ̀rọ̀ bá sọnù, òwe la fi ń wá. The rough translation is proverbs are the horses of words or language. When words are lost, it is with proverbs that we find them. This illuminates deep underlying meanings. My oriki, or praise poetry, lovingly recited by my mother and grandmother, serve as a powerful reminder of my heritage and legacy, and they guide my personal and professional life and encourage me not to deviate from an honorable path that my forebears had established. This profound connection to my ethnic identity, I explain, often inspires me more than my national identity as a Nigerian, particularly given Nigeria's unfulfilled promise since independence of building a nation that fulfills the national ideals of being a collective, united people who are motivated by common purpose to develop our country to the fullest potential possible. So I am shaped by my Yoruba sensibilities, and I'm going to turn to the challenges of the diaspora and my call for unity. The journey into the diaspora, whether in early centuries or today, has brought its own unique set of challenges. I experienced blatant, unmediated racism while apartment hunting in New York in the 1980s. This was a shocking reality for me. I also faced isolation and profound lack of empathy from Columbia faculty when I had to take a leave of absence because I was pregnant with my first child at the end of my first year at Columbia, which was 1982. I had to really persist in insisting that I needed a leave of absence. And my experience, because it was so harsh, led to a pervasive feeling of not belonging at Columbia and questioning why I felt like a stranger on campus. My advisor's biased assessment of my capabilities, which I actually directly challenged as racist and sexist, highlighted the hostility and animosity that shaped my academic experience. The diaspora, as I define it, evokes notions of a scattering, a forced dispersal, an exile that echoes the Jewish experience in Babylon. And more acutely for Africans, the forcible, this is a quote from the chapter, quote, the forcible snatching away of Africans from the continent into the maws of the slave economy, unquote. So while some modern migrations are volitional and are driven by people's desire to go explore, many are driven by compulsion, with Africans fleeing hunger, economic dead ends, political upheaval, and even war. Both historical and contemporary diasporas are propelled by capitalist motives. And the capitalists, all they want is labor. They want this labor and they want commodities. They want both to be as cheap as possible. And so they have made Africa into a labor reserve and also a place from which they just take raw materials that they then refine and sell at profit, often at prices that are not affordable to the people from whose land the commodities are, dug up or just appropriated. However, my work also presents a powerful call for unity and collective self-help from Africans and the African diaspora. Here again, I made Yoruba proverbs central to my vision. Ènìyàn láṣọ mi, people are my clothing. I am nothing without my people. People are my wealth. Àgbájọ ọwọ́ la fi ń sọ̀yà. Unity is crucial for success and self-realization. This proverb also means that one uses, if you are doing the literal translation, that you use your entire palm to beat your chest when you are saying I. Ọwọ́ kan ò gbẹ́rù dórí. One hand cannot heft a load onto the head. Ọmọdé gbọ́n, àgbà gbọ́n la fi kọ́ Ilé-Ifẹ̀. The wisdom of both youth and elders built Ilé-Ifẹ̀. Ilé-Ifẹ̀ is the ancestral birthplace of the Yoruba people. These proverbs underscore the importance of community and collaboration. As I see it, home is not an unchanging, immutable, and fixed place, but is rather in motion. This is a quote from the chapter. Home is constantly changing and potentially unfamiliar to the sojourner. I advocate, in spite of the trauma of how once you leave, you can't go home no more because the place that is home changes. The people that are family, some of them may pass away, like my siblings and parents and grandparents. Relationships change. Economies change. The politics changes. So home is not a fixed place that is immutable, but we can build communities wherever we are, even in the diaspora, based on fictive kinship. Now, for the Yorubas, blood relations are not the only family relations. We believe in fictive kinship and in creating family wherever goodwill and philosophical commitment exist. I believe if we embrace this, we can then engage in progressive identity politics rooted in Pan-Africanist ideals. My fourth segment, reconciling the past and building a unified future. To truly move forward, I emphasize the critical need for frank discussions about our painful histories. This includes acknowledging the enslavement of African peoples, initially by other Africans, and later by European businesses who were seeking unpaid labor for their newly discovered lands, the Americas, the so-called New World. This history creates bad blood and deep-seated animosities that, coupled with the misinformation and miseducation of colonial and imperialist systems, impede Pan-African unity and have, quote-unquote, colonized African minds. I note the particular pain and sense of betrayal felt by those ripped away from their kin, treated as mere merchandise, and the lingering hurt that their own people seemed to be complicit in their dehumanization. As the Yoruba say, If two siblings emerge smiling from a discussion about a problem, they haven't been honest with each other. So we need to discuss our pain and many of the hurt that are in our historical past. And we need to do that very honestly. But yet, I remain resolutely and fiercely optimistic about the potential for us to change. And in this, I'm guided by another powerful Yoruba adage, àtẹ́lẹwọ́ ẹni la fi ń tún ìwà ara ẹni ṣe. One rehabilitates one's character or one's faith with one's hands, meaning the solution to one's problems lies within oneself, or with hard work, one can transform adversity into good fortune. It could also be translated to mean self-help is crucial to success. This principle calls for collective self-help, stressing that Africans must demonstrate to a skeptical world their capacity to help themselves, not for external validation, but, and I want to emphasize, underline, and really ask us to remember this, that what we do should help us all, Africans, to create durable communities where, in love, we help one another. Some of the stuff we do should be philanthropic. And we should remember that we have shared ideals that are from Africa, like collective self-help, like values of generosity, like informal, coming together, networking, and selfless interest in the welfare of others. These are all African values, and I want us to bear that in mind. So, to go on, the vision I have for us in philanthropy is drawing directly from Yoruba values. And that vision is inclusive as well as strategic. When the Yorubas say, Ile Latin Keshorode, they're saying charity begins at home. They are implying that a focus on local communities and kinfolk should be prior to venturing outside to help others. And this includes venturing abroad. And so venturing into diaspora is part of what we are intended to think of in philanthropic ways, of responding to the need of our fellow Africans. I broadly define kinfolk to include all peoples of African descent, African Americans, African Caribbean peoples, African Latino peoples, Africans in Africa, and wherever it is that African peoples are in this world. I'm advocating for mutual and collective self-reliance to solve the massive problems that confront us African peoples. I emphasize that ojú ọ̀run tẹ́yẹ fò láì fapá gúnra wọn. The sky is big enough for all birds to fly without hitting each other. This means well-designed organizations can coexist and fulfill their mandates of philanthropy, of development, of meeting the needs of fellow Africans without destructive competition. I also want to remind us that ọmọdé gbọ́n, àgbà gbọ́n la fi kọ́ Ilé-Ifẹ̀. This exhorts us not to dismiss anyone's contributions, reminding us that Yorùbás believe that wisdom can come from both young and old. Wisdom can come from men as well as women. Wisdom can come from all of us. And collective wisdom will carry us forward to meet the challenges that we face and also help to solve many of the problems that thus far are intractable. Ultimately, I conclude with a powerful message of hope and determination. The Yoruba concept of Ori, meaning the head, but really also meaning the essence of a person, is a powerful force that Yorubas believe affects and shapes human fate. While this saying, this idea, this concept of Ori might suggest a fatalistic belief in predestination, I clarify Ori as also giving us imagination, creativity, and unique characteristics, and that Ori can be worked upon with our hands to transform catastrophe into well-being. This requires seeking help when necessary, maintaining an open mind, learning from others, and embracing the heavy lifting required for positive change. The call to action is clear. With unity, openness to learning, a commitment to unearthing and rehabilitating history, and a burning desire to form both popular and scholarly epistemic communities to solve African problems and then the world's problems. And this is a quote from the chapter, quote, "Africa will emerge from the margins and take a central position in world affairs. Africa will soar like a phoenix and shine like the sun," unquote. So we have work to do, and without engaging in destructive. So here's my final word. My exploration of my chapter, "You Can't Go Home No More," is far more than a personal narrative. It's a deep dive into the historical, cultural, and political forces that shape African identity and migration today. It reminds us that while the physical home may change or become elusive, the essence of who we are, rooted in our heritage and community, remains a powerful force for resilience and transformation. Thank you for joining us on Global Pathways. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep thinking about how you can do selfless work that helps Africans, African governments, African diaspora, and African peoples wherever they are. Think also of how, in doing this, you can also find ways of helping our embattled world. So, let us remember the power of collective wisdom, collective work, collective